She mistook his car for her Uber on Christmas Eve. The Mafia boss locked the doors and said, "You're not leaving, Bambi." Lily Whitmore got into the wrong car at 11:47 p.m. on Christmas Eve, wearing a dress she'd bought on clearance and heels that had already given her 2 blisters and 1 broken strap. In exactly 3 minutes, bullets would shatter the windows above her head. In exactly 1 hour, she would be standing in the snow outside a Gothic mansion covered in Christmas lights with no idea how she got there or how to leave. But she didn't know any of that yet. Right now, she was standing on a frozen Brooklyn sidewalk, watching her phone die. "Ugh, I hate Christmas," she thought, pulling her thin coat tighter. "Nothing like the holidays to remind you exactly how alone you were." It wasn't the carols or the decorations or even the forced cheer. It was the way the whole world seemed to pair off, leaving her standing alone on sidewalks like this one, reminded of exactly how invisible she was. Just another Christmas Eve proving what she already knew. Some people were meant to be found, and some people were meant to be forgotten. Sophia's Christmas party had been exactly what she'd expected. Loud music, cheap champagne, and that particular kind of loneliness that came from being surrounded by people who smiled without seeing you. She'd slipped out the moment no one was looking. The cold hit her like a physical blow. December in New York was beautiful if you had someone to share it with, but Lily had no family. She watched her phone blink from 8% to nothing. The screen went black. A black SUV pulled up, windows tinted dark, and relief flooded through her. She didn't check the license plate, her fingers were numb, and she just wanted to go home. She yanked open the back door and threw herself inside. "Oh, thank gosh," she breathed, sinking into leather. "Brooklyn, 4th Street, please. I'm the one who called. My phone died, but the order went through. Can you turn up the heat? I can't feel my fingers." A voice cut through her, rambling like a blade. "Who are you?" Lily's eyes snapped open. The man in the front seat had turned, and everything inside her went still. Ice blue eyes pinned her in place, set in a face carved from stone, sharp jaw, dark hair, an expression that suggested her presence was an inconvenience he was calculating how to remove. She tried to find her voice, stammering under that frozen stare. I'm the one who called. The Uber. You're supposed to take me to Brooklyn." He stared at her. Then his eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, and his expression hardened. The SUV lurched forward so hard her head cracked against the headrest. "Hey!" She grabbed the seat, indignation flooding through her. "What are you doing? I will report you." Another car pulled alongside, black, sleek. The window rolled down. A gun. The sound that escaped her was barely human. "Is that... Oh my God!" A hand shot back, grabbed her hair, and shoved her face toward the floor. "Down!" One word. Not a request. The first bullet shattered the back window. Lily screamed, glass raining down as she pressed her face into carpet. More shots, crack, 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 and she could hear him speaking rapid Italian, completely calm, as if being shot at was routine. "Let me out!" she screamed. "Stop the car!" The single word that came back was flat, final. "No." The chase continued, sharp turns, bullets pinging off metal. When it finally stopped, she stayed face down, trembling. Up. A hand gripped her arm and pulled her upright. Through the cracked window, a Gothic mansion draped in Christmas lights. He was already out, moving to her door. When he opened it, his expression was stone. Lily pressed back against the seat, her voice shaking. "I'm not going anywhere with you." His hand closed around her elbow, unbreakable, and he pulled her out, dragging her toward the house. "Let go!" She tried to yank free. "I said let go!" His voice was flat, cold, eyes fixed ahead as he walked. "Wrong car. Those men saw your face, now you're coming with me. I'm not... You walk out that gate. They grab you in 2 minutes. His jaw tightened. "They think you're my woman. They'll use you, or kill you." Her blood ran cold, but she kept fighting his grip. "Tell them I'm not." "Won't matter." Still walking. "They saw. That's enough." "You can't." "Stop talking." The words cut like a knife. "I have things to handle." The front door burst open. A small round woman rushed out in a red apron, white hair flying. "Nico! Che è successo?" The old woman spotted Lily and stopped dead. Worry vanished, replaced by pure joy. "A girlfriend!" Her hands flew to her cheeks, eyes going wet. "Nico, you brought a girlfriend on Christmas Eve!" Before Lily could react, the woman pulled her into a crushing hug. "No, I'm not." Lily tried to pull back, words muffled against the woman's shoulder. The old woman released her just enough to cup her face, examining her like a prize. "She's beautiful," she breathed. "Look at these eyes. Nico, where have you been hiding her?" Desperation made Lily's voice crack. "I'm not his girlfriend. I got in the wrong car." But the woman wasn't listening. She pinched Lily's cheek hard enough to sting, her smile impossibly wide. "So modest, and this figure, my grandchildren will be gorgeous." Lily's voice rose an octave. "Grandchildren? I thought he was my Uber." The old woman leaned in conspiratorially, loud enough for everyone to hear. "She's shy. Don't worry, Tesoro. The Santoro men are intense." "I'm not shy." Lily's voice went shrill. "I was kidnapped." The woman paused, blinked, looked at Nico, who stood at the doorway showing nothing. A slow smile spread across her weathered face, hands clasping together. "Romantic." Lily felt her jaw drop. "What? How is kidnapping romantic?" The woman was already steering her inside, grip surprisingly strong. "Your father kidnapped me, you know. Well, aggressively courted. I was engaged to someone else." She sighed dreamily. "He didn't care. Very passionate, the Santoro men." This was her chance. Lily spotted the still open door and bolted. She made it 3 steps before a wall of muscle materialized. A massive man, hands like dinner plates, face like carved granite, blocked her path. She tried to dart around him. He simply shifted, immovable as concrete. "Let me go!" She shoved at his chest. Nothing. Nico's voice came from behind, flat and bored. "Marco! Inside!" The giant took her arm, not rough, just inevitable, and steered her back through the door. The old woman patted her hand soothingly. "Such spirit! I love her already. I'm Rosa, Tesoro, Nico's mother." She beamed. "Are you hungry? You're too thin. We need to feed you before you give me grandbabies." Lily looked desperately at Nico, who was climbing the stairs. "Are you going to say anything?" He paused on the 3rd step, turning just enough to look at her. Those ice-blue eyes held nothing. "Mother will handle you." His voice was flat as stone. "Stay inside. Don't try to leave." "She thinks I'm your girlfriend." Lily's voice cracked with disbelief. He paused again. Those eyes traveled slowly from her ruined heels to her tear-streaked face. "Bambi." The word landed like a verdict. Confusion cut through her panic. "What?" Big hazel eyes, scared, helpless. His voice was clinical, detached. "Like a deer in the wrong forest." Something sparked in her chest, anger finding its footing. "I'm a lawyer." He cut her off without raising his voice, the words landing like stones. "You got in the wrong car. Now you're in the wrong world. Try not to die in it, Bambi." "Aren't you going to tell her I'm not your girlfriend?" The question came out desperate, and she hated herself for it. The single syllable landed like a door slamming shut. "No!" Her voice cracked, rising. "Why not?" Something flickered in his gaze. Not quite amusement, but close. His lips barely moved. More entertaining this way. Then he was gone, swallowed by shadows. Rosa tugged her arm gently. "Don't mind him, Tesoro. He's not good with emotions." Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "But I can tell he likes you." A sound escaped Lily. Half laugh, half sob. "He finds my suffering entertaining." Rosa's face lit up like the Christmas lights outside, her eyes sparkling. "Exactly. He never finds anything entertaining." She squeezed Lily's arm with surprising strength. "This is progress." Lily opened her mouth, closed it. No words came. Rosa patted her cheek with warm, calloused fingers. "Come, eat first." She paused, eyes twinkling. "Then we talk about the wedding." The words hit like ice water. "There's no wedding!" Rosa was already steering her toward the kitchen, completely undeterred. humming what sounded like a wedding march. Not yet. The tears came later. One moment Lily was arguing about someone named Salvatore Jr. The next she was sobbing into a napkin while Rosa rubbed her back. "I just wanted to go home," she whispered, voice raw and broken. "I just wanted to watch Netflix and pretend tomorrow wasn't another Christmas alone." Rosa's manic energy faded like a light dimming. "Alone? I don't have family, foster care, no parents, no one." A bitter laugh scraped her throat. "The one time I end up with a family, it's because criminals want to kill me." Rosa's arms wrapped around her, gentle this time. "You have family now, Tesoro, whether you want us or not." Lily's voice was muffled against Rosa's shoulder. "You can't just adopt a kidnapping victim." Rosa pulled back, eyes fierce despite tears tracking down her cheeks. "Watch me. You ate my pasta. In Italy that makes you family." Later, alone in a guest room bigger than her apartment, a soft knock came. "It's Rosa. Can I come in?" A tired sigh escaped Lily. "Yes." Rosa slipped inside, earlier energy replaced by something softer. "I know I'm a lot. I get carried away." She paused, something old and painful moving behind her eyes. "It's been 14 years since my husband died. 14 years watching my son freeze until there was nothing but ice." Lily shook her head slowly. "I'm not what you're looking for. I just got in the wrong car." Rosa reached over and squeezed her hand firmly. "Maybe, but my son noticed you. He really looked for the first time in 14 years. He gave you a name." "Bambi." Lily's voice was flat, unamused. "Because I'm helpless." Rosa's eyes bore into hers with sudden intensity. "Because you made him pay attention. Beautiful women, powerful women, he sees through them like ghosts. But you made him stop." Lily didn't know what to say. Her throat felt tight. Rosa moved to the door, pausing with her hand on the frame. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow will be complicated." She glanced back, that spark returning to her eyes. "But tonight, you're safe. You're fed. You're home." The words came automatically, defensive. "This isn't my home." Rosa's smile was soft but certain, weighted with something that looked like hope. "Not yet. Give it time." The door closed softly behind her. Lily sat in silence, mind spinning. She was not going to fall for a criminal. She was not going to let a crazy grandmother adopt her. She was absolutely not going to give it time. By mid-morning, hunger and the desperate need to do something pushed her out of the room and into the maze of marble hallways. She needed to scout the house anyway, memorize weak points, blind spots. So she moved through the east wing with careful, measured steps, mapping every turn in her head. A voice came from behind her, cheerful, casual, wildly out of place in this nightmare. "Well, well, well, you must be the kidnapped girl everyone's been whispering about." Lily spun so fast she nearly slipped, her back hitting the wall as her heart pounded. A young man lounged in a doorway, messy dark hair, warm brown eyes, dimples cutting deep into his cheeks. "Get away from me!" she burst out, hands raised uselessly. He lifted both palms, undisturbed. "Whoa! Easy. I'm Enzo, the funny one. Uncle Nico is the scary one." The word uncle snagged her attention. "Uncle?" she snapped. "He's your uncle?" 15-year age gap, Enzo said with a grin. "He raised me after my parents died. So, yeah, Uncle Nico. He hates it, which is exactly why I say it every chance I get." Lily's fear and fury twisted together. "So, his name really is Nico? The man who kidnapped me? The terrifying one?" She swallowed. "How old is he?" 39, Enzo replied without hesitation. "Looks younger when he's not glowering at everyone. Rare, but it happens." Lily let out a humorless breath. "Well, maybe I should call him Uncle too," she muttered. "He's 15 years older than me as well, and honestly, annoying him sounds like the only pleasure I'd get in this hellhole." Enzo barked a laugh, then immediately shook his head. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that. Why not? Because when he gets angry, Enzo said, still smiling but with a flicker of seriousness, he doesn't do the whole dramatic yelling thing. He gets quiet. And when Nico gets quiet, that's when people start praying. Her stomach tightened at that. She tore her gaze away, scanning the corridor again. Enzo noticed instantly. Front door has 6 guards, he said casually. Back door has 4. Garden wall's got cameras that trip alarms like Christmas lights. A shrug. Not saying don't try. I respect the spirit. Just maybe eat first. Rosa's cornetti are worth surviving for. I don't want your food, she snapped, or anything from any of you. Fair enough, Bambi. She flinched. Don't call me that. Don't you dare call me that. Enzo lifted a brow, amused. That's what Uncle Nico calls you. Thought it was your actual name, is it not? Her hands curled into fists at her sides, nails digging into her palms. It's not my name. My name is Lily, and I would appreciate it if at least one person in this house used it. Okay, Lily, noted. He turned to leave, but paused. Word of advice, garden wall looks climbable, but there's a 4-foot drop and frozen ground. Also, Uncle Nico is in a meeting until 2. Then he was gone, whistling something that sounded like a Christmas carol as he disappeared around the corner, and Lily stood frozen in the hallway with her mind racing through possibilities. At exactly 2:15, Lily found herself clinging to the top of the garden wall, fingers numb from cold and breath spilling in sharp white puffs. The stone was slick with frost, and the borrowed heels were useless for climbing, but sheer desperation had pushed her this far. Freedom was so close she could taste it. She swung her leg over the edge, eyeing the frozen ground below, calculating her landing. But her foot slid on a thin sheet of ice. The world tipped sideways. Her palms scraped violently against stone as she clawed for something, anything, to hold on to. It didn't matter. Gravity won. She hit the ground hard on her side, the impact knocking every drop of air from her lungs. Pain shot through her ankle, sharp and electric, and when she tried to stand, her leg buckled beneath her in a gasp of agony. A voice drifted down from above, cold, flat, and so calm it made her stomach drop. Finished? Lily dragged her tear-blurred gaze upward. Nico stood over her at the top of the wall, hands in his pockets, face carved from stone. No surprise, no anger, just cold inevitability, like he'd known exactly when and where she would fall. You? How? She gasped, wincing as she tried to sit up. You were supposed to be in a meeting until 2. Nico jumped down beside her, landing with predatory grace. As he crouched, his eyes traveled over her ankle, assessing it like a problem to be solved. Then his attention flicked to her face. His voice dropped, quiet and razor-sharp. Interesting that you know my schedule that well. Her stomach twisted. She hadn't meant to sound like she was tracking him. She was just trying to escape. He didn't give her time to answer. Meeting ended early, he said, gaze returning to her swollen ankle. Can you put weight on it? I'm fine, she snapped, trying again to stand. I don't need your... Her ankle screamed in protest, collapsing under her. She would have hit the ground again, but Nico's hand shot out with inhuman reflexes, gripping her arm, steadying her effortlessly. Before she could shove him away, he swept her up, one arm under her knees, the other behind her back, lifting her as if she weighed nothing. She pushed at his chest, uselessly. Put me down! I can walk! I don't need you to carry me! His expression didn't change. He didn't slow. He didn't even look irritated. He simply tightened his hold the slightest bit, securing her against him, and began walking back toward the house, like carrying furious, wounded girls was just another part of his day. His expression didn't change and his pace didn't slow. You can't walk, you can barely stand. That's not your problem, just leave me alone. In the snow? With a broken ankle? His voice was flat and almost bored. You're light, Bambino. What do you weigh? 90 pounds? The question was so unexpected and so utterly inappropriate that her struggling paused, and she stared up at him in disbelief. What? Why would you even ask that? £90, maybe less. He repeated without inflection, still walking, still not looking at her face, like carrying a bird. Outrage temporarily overrode her fear, and her voice came out indignant. I'm £117 for your information. And it's probably not broken, just sprained. We'll see what the doctor says. I don't need a doctor. I need to go home. His eyes flicked down to her feet, dangling uselessly in those ridiculous borrowed heels. These feet. What size are they? 5? She squirmed in his grip with her face flushing with something that burned hot. Size 6, and I'm 5'4". Not that any of this is remotely your business. His only response was another low sound, filed away like data being stored. Frustration boiled over, and her voice rose to echo across the frozen garden. And my name is Lily. Not Bambi. Not Bambino. Lily. Why won't anyone in this house call me by my actual name? He glanced down at her then, those frozen eyes meeting hers for one brief and devastating second that seemed to stop time entirely. I know, Bambi. Something in his gaze made the words die in her throat before they could form. He wasn't mocking her, and he wasn't angry. He was just looking at her, really looking, like he was cataloguing every detail of her face and filing it away somewhere important. Then Rosa was rushing toward them, making distressed Italian noises, and Lily's heart was doing something strange and traitorous in her chest that she absolutely refused to examine. Call Dr. Marchetti, he said to Rosa without breaking stride, and Lily caught the older woman's worried nod before they were climbing a sweeping staircase, then moving down an endless hallway lined with oil paintings and doors that all looked the same. He shouldered one open and carried her into a bedroom bigger than her entire Bushwick apartment, setting her down on the bed like she was made of glass. She immediately scrambled backward against the headboard, her injured ankle screaming in protest. He watched her retreat with those unreadable eyes, then disappeared through a door. When he returned, he was holding a small jar of something that smelled like eucalyptus. Give me your ankle. No. She tucked her feet beneath her despite the pain. Don't touch me. He didn't argue, just looked at her with that frozen stare and waited. Extend your ankle, Bambi. She didn't know why she obeyed. Later, she would blame exhaustion, shock, the way his voice dropped into something that wasn't quite command, but wasn't quite request. But she found herself stretching out her leg like a child, following instructions she didn't understand. His hands were warm. That was the first surprise. She'd expected ice, expected those cold eyes to translate into cold fingers, but his touch was gentle, almost unbearably so, as he cradled her swollen ankle and worked the cream into her skin with slow, careful strokes. Who would have thought this frozen man could be this gentle, she thought, watching his hands move, like I'm something worth being careful with. When he finished, he wiped his hands and straightened, his expression shuttering back into that unreadable mask. Rest until tonight, 7 o'clock. He moved toward the door. Family dinner, the Christmas dinner we missed last night because I was late. I'm not your family. The door clicked shut behind him. Lily stared at the ceiling, her ankle wrapped in warmth and her heart doing something absolutely unacceptable. What the hell just happened? She nurned to herself. The red dress appeared on her bed at 7 o'clock, laid across the white bedspread like a splash of blood against snow. It was beautiful, deep crimson silk with long sleeves and a neckline that would show her collarbones. Next to it sat strappy satin heels in the exact same shade of red. She absolutely should not try them on. The dress fit like it had been made for her body, and the shoes fit perfectly, like Cinderella's glass slipper if Cinderella had been kidnapped by the Italian mafia. £117, size 6 shoes, 5'4", every number she'd shouted at him in anger he'd remembered and used to choose something that fit perfectly. Instead of changing back, she walked down the grand staircase with her heart pounding, every step feeling like walking toward something inevitable. The dining room fell silent when she appeared in the doorway, every conversation dying mid-sentence as heads turned toward her. Rosa's hands flew to her mouth as tears sprang to her eyes, and Enzo let out a low whistle of appreciation that earned him a sharp glare from Marco across the table. Nico was the only one who didn't look up from his plate, cutting his food with precise mechanical movements. Rosa rushed toward her with hands clasped together like she was witnessing a miracle. "Bellissima! Oh, tesoro, look at you, the color, the fit, everything is perfect." She spun toward her son with excitement building. "Nico, look! See how beautiful she is! You chose so well, my son!" Heat flooded Lily's cheeks as her eyes snapped to Nico's impassive face with sudden understanding. "Wait, you chose this? You picked out this dress for me?" He continued eating without looking up, his expression utterly neutral. "Your dinner is getting cold, Bambi." "That's not an answer," she pressed, her voice sharper than she intended. "Did you or did you not choose this dress?" Rosa answered for him, beaming with pride. "He spent an hour with the catalogue, tesoro, an hour. My son, who never shops for anyone, not even for his own mother, measuring with his eyes, comparing colors, holding up fabric swatches to the light. Mama." Nico's voice was soft, but cut through like a blade through silk. "Enough." "Why?" Rosa's smile turned mischievous. "You are embarrassed? My Nico, embarrassed? This I have never seen." "I'm not embarrassed." His voice was flat, controlled. "I'm eating." Rosa fell silent, but her knowing smile didn't dim, and she steered Lily toward an empty chair with gentle insistence. Enzo leaned across the table with his dimples flashing mischievously. "Uncle Nico never buys anyone presents, ever. Not even for Christmas. This is genuinely historic. I should mark my calendar and alert the media." Nico's fork paused halfway to his mouth, and his voice dropped dangerous and low. "One more word, Enzo." "What?" "I'm just making an observation." Enzo's eyes went wide with false innocence. "It's sweet, really. Uncle Nico playing dress-up with his little Bambi like she's his own personal doll." Marco finally spoke from his end of the table, his voice gruff. "Boy's got a death wish." "Nah, he won't kill me." Enzo grinned. "I'm his favorite nephew." "You're his only nephew," Marco pointed out dryly. "Exactly. Irreplaceable." The glare Nico leveled at Enzo could have frozen the Mediterranean in August. But Enzo just grinned and returned to his food without an ounce of repentance. Lily stared at her plate and tried desperately to process what was happening. This man had kidnapped her, called her Bambi like she was a pet instead of a person with a law degree, and yet he'd spent an hour choosing her a dress that fit like it was made for her. When the meal finally ended, Lily escaped toward the stairs, desperate for solitude. She was almost to the landing when his voice stopped her cold, a single word, low and commanding. "Bambi." She turned slowly, her hand gripping the banister hard enough to hurt, and found him standing at the bottom of the stairs, half shrouded in shadow with his face completely unreadable. "What do you want?" The words came out sharper than she intended. His voice was flat when he spoke, but something flickered in those frozen eyes. "You didn't thank me for the dress." "I didn't ask for a dress." Her hand tightened on the banister until her knuckles went white. "I didn't ask for any of this. And yet you're wearing it." She had no response to that, because he was right. She could have refused, could have come down in her old clothes, but she hadn't. The silence stretched between them, heavy and charged. "Thank you for the dress." The words came out barely above a whisper, pulled from her against her will. He looked at her then, really looked, his gaze traveling slowly from her heels up her silk-covered legs to her flushed face, taking in every inch of red fabric and pale skin with an intensity that made her feel more exposed than if she'd been naked. When his eyes finally met hers again, something had shifted in their frozen depths, some glacier cracking to reveal dark water beneath. His voice was low and rough when he spoke, like the words had been dragged out against his will. "Red suits you, Bambi." Then he turned and disappeared into the darkness of the hallway, leaving her standing on the stairs with her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears and her cheeks burning like she'd been standing too close to a fire, and the absolute certainty settling into her bones that she was in far more danger than she'd ever imagined. Not from guns or enemies or the Valenti family hunting her, but from him, and the way he looked at her, and the way her traitorous heart responded. The red dress hung over the chair like an accusation, catching the pale morning light in a way that made the silk shimmer like fresh blood, and Lily couldn't stop staring at it from her position on the bed where she'd barely slept at all. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Nico's face at the bottom of the stairs, heard his voice saying those words that had burrowed under her skin and refused to leave. "Red suits you, Bambi," and felt that traitorous flutter in her chest that had no business existing in a kidnapping situation. She needed to get out of here before something happened that she couldn't take back. By 8 o'clock she was dressed in plain clothes and moving through the mansion with purpose. The kitchen was warm with the smell of fresh coffee, and Rosa stood at the stove with her back turned, humming an Italian lullaby. Lily's eyes found what she was looking for immediately: a small paring knife sitting next to a bowl of fruit. She moved without thinking, her hand closing around the handle and slipping it into her back pocket, her heart hammering so loud she was sure Rosa would hear it. But Rosa kept humming, and Lily slipped out with the knife pressed against her spine. She found Enzo in the garden an hour later, sitting on a stone bench with his face tilted toward the weak winter sun. He opened his eyes when he heard her footsteps, and that familiar grin spread across his face. "Lily." His voice was warm, welcoming, completely at odds with the tension coiling in her stomach. "Finally decided to get some fresh air. I was starting to think you'd turned into a vampire up there in your room. You know, pale skin, avoiding sunlight, hissing at everyone who comes near." Lily stopped 6 feet away, her hand moving toward her back pocket as her pulse thundered in her ears. "I need to talk to you, Enzo. It's important." His eyebrows rose at her tone, the grin fading into something more cautious and alert. "Okay, that sounds serious. What's going on, Bambi? You look like you're about to either cry or kill someone." She pulled out the knife and held it in front of her with both hands wrapped around the handle, and Enzo's grin disappeared completely as he rose from the bench with careful, deliberate movements that reminded her of someone approaching a wild animal. "Whoa! Whoa!" He raised both hands slowly, palms out, his warm brown eyes widening with genuine alarm. "Bambi, what the hell are you doing with that? Where did you even get a knife?" "I want you to take me to the gate." Her voice came out steadier than she expected, even though her hands were shaking badly enough that the blade caught the light in erratic flashes. "Right now, Enzo, you're going to walk me out of here, and you're not going to try to stop me." "Okay, let's just slow down for a second here." His warm brown eyes never left hers, his voice dropping into something deliberately calm and soothing. "Put the knife down, and we can talk about this like rational adults. Nobody needs to get hurt today." "I don't want to talk." The words exploded out of her, raw and desperate, 3 days of fear and frustration finally boiling over. "I've been trapped here for 3 days, Enzo. 3 days. People shot at me, your uncle kidnapped me, and now everyone acts like I should just accept that this is my life now." He tried to interject, his voice softening with something that might have been genuine sympathy. "I know this is hard, Bambi, I really do. But if you'd just let me explain." "You don't know anything." Her grip on the knife tightened until her knuckles went white. "I have a job, an apartment, a life that doesn't involve guns and criminals and dresses that cost more than my rent." Enzo took a careful step toward her, hands still raised. "You're right, but I know what's waiting outside, and trust me, it's worse than anything in here." "Stop calling me Bambi." Tears burned in her eyes. "My name is Lily Whitmore. I'm a lawyer, well, a junior associate who gets paid less than the office receptionist and takes orders from people half as smart as me." Her voice cracked, but she pushed through, anger fueling the words. "I graduated top of my class, top, and no one cares, no one sees it. But that tiny apartment and that pathetic paycheck and that invisible life, it's mine, my freedom, and I want it back. And I'm not spending one more day as a prisoner." Something shifted in his expression. Genuine sympathy, maybe respect. "You really want to leave, knowing the Valentis will grab you the second you step outside?" "I'll take my chances. Anything is better than this cage." "Is it?" His gaze sharpened, suddenly reminding her of his uncle. "You're alive, You're fed. Yeah, Uncle Nico is terrifying, but he's the only reason you're still breathing. He's the reason I'm in danger. No. Enzo's voice went hard. Lorenzo Valenti is the reason. Nico is the reason you're not already dead. There's a difference. The words hit her like a blow, but she remembered the cage, however gilded. Take me to the gate, Enzo, please. Her voice cracked. Just let me go. He studied her for a long moment, then sighed. Okay, I'll take you, but I need you to understand something first. What is it? Her grip on the knife loosened slightly. The moment you walk through that gate, I can't protect you. Neither can Uncle Nico. His voice was deadly serious now. And Lorenzo Valenti won't just kill you. That would be too merciful. He'll use you first, to hurt Nico, to send a message. Ice flooded her veins, but she forced herself to hold his gaze. I understand. I'm still going. Enzo sighed, accepting defeat. Okay, your choice. He started walking toward the front of the property. Come on, I'll take you to the gate. She followed him down the winding path, past frozen fountains and dormant rose bushes and statues that watched her with blank stone eyes, her grip on the knife never loosening, even as doubt began to creep into the edges of her resolve. The front gate loomed ahead, massive iron bars topped with spikes that suddenly looked less decorative and more like a warning. Enzo stopped by the security panel and turned to face her one last time, his expression heavy with something that looked almost like grief. Last chance to change your mind, Lily. Once you're out there, you're completely on your own. I won't be able to help you. She forced the word out through a throat that had gone completely dry, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Open it, please. He typed in a code and the gate swung open with a soft, mechanical hum, revealing the frozen sidewalk and grey Manhattan street beyond. Freedom stretched before her, or at least the illusion of it. Good luck, Lily. Enzo's voice was quiet, almost sad, weighted with genuine concern. I really mean that. Stay safe out there, if you can. She didn't look back as she walked through the gate. Didn't see him pull out his phone the moment she was gone. Didn't hear him speak 3 urgent words into the receiver. She's out. Hurry. The street was quieter than she'd expected. Residential and tree-lined with expensive brownstones and parked cars that cost more than her annual salary. Lily walked as fast as she could without breaking into a run, her eyes scanning desperately for a taxi, a bus, anything that could take her away from here. A cab appeared at the end of the block, and she stepped into the street with her arm raised, waving frantically to get the driver's attention. The driver didn't even slow down, his off-duty light glowing yellow as he passed her without a second glance. She tried again with the next one, and the next one, but they all kept driving like she was invisible, like she was already a ghost, haunting these expensive streets. The black van appeared out of nowhere, sliding up to the curb beside her with a predatory silence that made her blood run cold and her stomach drop like a stone. The side door was already sliding open before she could react, and 2 men were climbing out with practiced efficiency, big, dressed in dark clothes, moving with the kind of coordinated precision that spoke of experience. Nico's woman? One of them asked the other, his voice casual and almost bored, like he was confirming a grocery order instead of identifying a kidnapping target. This the one Lorenzo wants? That's her. The second man was already reaching for her arm with thick, brutal fingers. Matches the description exactly. Brunette, small, pretty. Let's move before someone sees us. Ice water flooded Lily's veins as terror wrapped icy fingers around her lungs and squeezed until she couldn't breathe. She tried to scream, but her throat closed up completely, tried to run, but her muscles locked in place. Please. The word came out as a pathetic whisper as rough hands grabbed her arms and started dragging her toward the van. Please, you've made a mistake. I'm not his woman. I'm nobody. I just want to go home. Shut up. One of them clamped a meaty hand over her mouth, while the other grabbed her legs, lifting her off the ground like she weighed nothing. Boss wants you alive, but he didn't say anything about conscious, so you can come quiet, or you can come unconscious, your choice. They were lifting her toward the van's gaping darkness when the gunshot split the morning air like a crack of thunder. One of the men screamed and released her arm, clutching his shoulder where blood was already blooming through his dark jacket like a deadly flower. Lily hit the ground hard on her hands and knees, pain shooting through her palms, and through tear-blurred eyes she saw him standing in the middle of the street like an avenging angel carved from ice and fury. Nico, his gun still raised, his face completely expressionless, despite the violence radiating from every line of his body. "Put her down." His voice was cold enough to freeze fire, each word sharp as a blade. "Now. I won't ask twice." The uninjured man pulled a gun of his own, pointing it directly at Lily's head with a hand that wasn't quite steady. "Back off, Santoro. She's coming with us. Lorenzo's orders." Nico didn't even flinch at the weapon aimed at her skull. He took a step forward, utterly unconcerned, his ice-blue eyes never leaving the man's face. "You have 3 seconds to drop that gun before I put a bullet between your eyes. And trust me, I don't miss." The man's voice cracked with desperate bravado as he tried to hold his ground. "Lorenzo wants her." 1. Nico's voice was flat, emotionless, counting down like a metronome. "You're outnumbered, Santoro. There's 2 of us and 2. The man's hand was shaking badly now, sweat beading on his forehead and dripping down his temples despite the freezing December temperature. His partner was groaning on the ground, blood pooling beneath him on the frozen pavement. "Tell your coward boss something for me." Nico's voice dropped even lower, each word dripping with menace and promise. "Tell him if he wants my woman, he comes for her himself like a man. He doesn't send rats to do his hunting." Another step forward, gun still raised. "Tell Lorenzo Valenti that this is my neighborhood. She is mine, and the next man who puts his hands on her dies screaming. Do you understand me?" The gun clattered to the ground as the man's nerve finally broke completely. Both men scrambled toward the van in blind panic, the injured one dragging himself across the frozen pavement and leaving a trail of blood behind, and within seconds they were peeling away with tires screaming against the asphalt. Nico was beside her in an instant, dropping to his knees on the cold ground, his hands running over her body with clinical efficiency as he checked for injuries. "Bambi, are you hurt? Did they touch you? Tell me where it hurts." "No, I don't think so." Words wouldn't form properly, her whole body shaking so hard she could barely breathe. "They grabbed me, but I don't think I'm hurt. I just—" His voice softened slightly, though his eyes were still chips of frozen sky as he cupped her face in his hands. "Can you stand? Can you walk?" She tried to push herself up, but her arms gave out beneath her, trembling too badly to support her weight. And then he was lifting her into his arms, like she weighed nothing at all, one arm under her knees, the other behind her back, pulling her tight against his chest. "I told you, Bambi." His voice was quiet as he carried her toward a black SUV that had appeared at the curb, and there was something in his tone that might have been anger or fear or something else entirely. "I told you what would happen if you ran. Why didn't you listen to me?" "I'm sorry." The words came out broken and pathetic, tears streaming down her face. "I just wanted to go home. I just wanted my life back." "You almost died." Something cracked in his voice just for a moment before the ice reformed around his words. 30 seconds later, and you'd be in that van, and there's nothing I could have done to save you. Do you understand that? 30 seconds, Bambi." The world was going grey at the edges, shock and adrenaline crash combining into a wave of darkness that threatened to pull her under. The last thing she saw before unconsciousness claimed her was Nico's face above hers, his ice-blue eyes burning with something that looked terrifyingly like fear. She woke to warmth and softness, and the distant sound of raised voices filtering through fog. "Could have gotten her killed." Nico's voice cut through like broken glass, and she heard something slam against a surface. "I trusted you, Enzo. She had a knife to my throat." Enzo sounded wounded, stripped of his usual charm. "What was I supposed to do? Tackle her?" "You were supposed to call me," Nico said, his voice dropping to something worse than shouting, cold, lethal. "Not walk her to the goddamn gate." "You said she wasn't a prisoner. You said—" A crash cut him off, something shattering against a wall. "I said protect her." The words came out quiet now, deadly. Lorenzo's men had their hands on her. 30 seconds later, she'd be gone. "Do you understand what he does to leverage?" Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. I know, Enzo whispered, all bravado gone. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't undo what Lorenzo does to people. Footsteps paced back and forth, restless, furious. She doesn't leave this house without me. Not with you. Not with Marco. Just me. Understood. The word came out immediately, chastened. Footsteps, coming closer, and the bedroom door opened with a soft creak. Lily quickly closed her eyes, evening out her breathing like she was still unconscious, her heart racing so fast she was certain he could hear it. She heard him move into the room, heard the soft click of the door closing behind him, felt the mattress dip as he sat on the edge of the bed beside her. His weight shifted the bed, pulling her slightly toward him. For a long moment, nothing happened. Just silence and the warmth of his presence and the faint scent of his cologne mixed with something darker, something that smelled like gunpowder and winter cold. Then she felt his hand in her hair, and every nerve ending in her body came alive at once. His touch was impossibly gentle, his fingers threading through her tangled waves with a tenderness that seemed completely wrong from a man who had just shot someone in the street without flinching. He stroked her hair slowly, rhythmically, like he was soothing a frightened animal, and something in Lily's chest cracked open. "Don't be scared, Bambi." His voice was barely a whisper, rough and low, meant only for her, even though he thought she couldn't hear. "I won't let anything happen to you. Not the Valentis, not Lorenzo, not anyone in this world." His hand stilled in her hair, and when he spoke again his voice was weighted with something that sounded like possession and prayer and desperation all tangled together. "You're mine now, Bambi. Do you understand? Mine to protect. Mine to keep safe. Mine to—" He trailed off, his thumb brushing gently across her cheekbone. "I'm not going to lose you. Not to Lorenzo. Not to anyone. Whatever it takes." Then the warmth of his hand disappeared, and she heard him stand, heard his footsteps cross slowly to the door, heard the soft click of the latch as he left her alone with those words burning in the darkness like embers. Lily's eyes flew open the moment the door closed, and she pushed herself up against the pillows with her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Those 3 words echoing through her mind like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. "You're mine now." The words should have terrified her. They did terrify her, because she was a modern woman with a law degree and strong opinions about possessive men who thought they could claim people like property. She should have been angry, should have been planning her next escape, should have been doing anything except lying here with warmth pooling in her chest. But the truth was messier than feminist theory and rational thought, because underneath the fear and the outrage there was something else, something that had sparked to life when he'd appeared in that street like vengeance incarnate, something that had grown when he'd gathered her in his arms like she was precious, something that was even now spreading through her chest like honey. He had shot a man for her, threatened to kill for her, and some ancient primal part of her brain that hadn't gotten the memo about modern civilization found that unbearably, shamefully attractive. What the hell was wrong with her? She was trapped in a mafia mansion with a man who called her Bambi and considered her his personal property, and instead of planning her next escape, she was lying in his bed wondering what his hands would feel like on other parts of her body. This was insane. She was insane. She needed to get a grip on herself before she did something monumentally stupid. But even as she thought it, she could still feel the ghost of his fingers in her hair, still hear that rough voice promising to protect her, still see those ice-blue eyes burning with something that looked terrifyingly like devotion. "You're mine now." The words kept circling through her mind like a prayer or a curse, or maybe both. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, was that some treacherous corner of her heart didn't want the memory of his touch to fade. She wanted more. Wanted those hands on her skin again, wanted to know what it would feel like if he touched her when she was awake, when she could touch him back. Lily woke to the smell of coffee and bacon, and for the first time since Christmas Eve, she didn't immediately start planning an escape. The bruises on her wrists had turned purple overnight. Every time she looked at them, she remembered being dragged into that van, the chloroform burning her nostrils, and then Nico's voice cutting through like a blade. "You're mine now." She pushed the memory away and made her way downstairs, wearing the cashmere sweater Nico had sent because it was practical, not because she was accepting anything. The kitchen was warm and bright, Christmas lights still twinkling despite the holiday being 3 days past. Rosa stood at the stove flipping pancakes, and Enzo sat at the counter scrolling through his phone. "Bambi descends from her tower," Enzo announced with a grin, and Rosa immediately abandoned her pancakes to usher Lily toward a chair. "Tesoro, sit. You need to eat. You're too thin." Rosa piled a plate high and set it in front of her before she could protest. "She's feeding you because she likes you," Enzo said through a mouthful of bacon. "When she doesn't like someone, she makes them eat her meatloaf." "My meatloaf is delicious." "It's a war crime, Bambi. Trust me." Lily found herself almost smiling, eating without meaning to. Enzo opened his mouth to say something else, but the words died when Nico walked in. She looked up and couldn't look away. The morning light caught the sharp angles of his face, the jaw shadowed with stubble, the broad shoulders stretching his black t-shirt. His dark hair was damp from a shower, and when those ice-blue eyes found hers, something hot twisted in her stomach. She dropped her gaze to her pancakes, heat crawling up her neck. "This is insane. He kidnapped me, and I'm noticing how attractive he is." "Uncle Nico, Bambi was staring at you," Enzo said in a stage whisper that carried across the entire kitchen, and Lily wanted to melt into the floor. "I was not staring," she protested, her voice coming out higher than intended. "I was just looking in that direction." "Sure you were." Enzo's grin was insufferable. "That's why your face is the color of Rosa's tomato sauce." "Enzo, leave the poor girl alone," Rosa scolded, but she was smiling too. Nico said nothing, just poured himself a cup of coffee with his back to the room. When he turned around, his expression was as unreadable as ever, those cold eyes giving nothing away. "Eat your breakfast, Bambino," he said, his voice low and quiet, and then he was gone, disappearing through the doorway without another word. Enzo burst out laughing the moment his uncle left, and Lily stabbed her pancake with more force than necessary. She found the library by accident that afternoon, wandering through the mansion's endless hallways. The room was massive, 2 stories of floor-to-ceiling bookshelves with leather armchairs arranged around a crackling fireplace. Lily pulled a book from the shelf and curled up in one of the armchairs, letting the familiar weight of pages soothe some of her anxiety. She'd been reading for maybe an hour when she heard footsteps, and she didn't have to look up to know who it was. "What are you reading?" Nico's voice came from somewhere to her left, and she kept her eyes fixed on the page. "Why do you care?" The response came out sharper than she intended, defensive and cold, but when she finally glanced up at him, his expression hadn't changed at all. He lowered himself into the armchair across from her, moving with that predatory grace she'd noticed the first night, and crossed one ankle over his knee like they were old friends having a casual conversation. "You came down for breakfast today," he observed, and Lily couldn't tell if it was a question or a statement. "I was hungry. You've been hungry for 3 days. Today you decided to eat with us. Don't read too much into it." She kept her voice flat, dismissive, but something flickered in his eyes that told her he wasn't buying it. "You're not a prisoner here," he said quietly, and she let out a laugh that sounded bitter even to her own ears. "Really? Because I can't leave? I don't have a phone. I don't have access to internet. I don't have anyone who knows where I am or if I'm even alive." She closed the book in her lap and met his gaze directly, refusing to flinch away from those cold blue eyes. "That sounds exactly like a prisoner to me." Nico was silent for a long moment, studying her with an intensity that made her want to squirm in her seat. When he finally spoke, his voice was different somehow, lower and more serious than she'd ever heard it. 3 days, he said, and Lily's brow furrowed in confusion. "What?" 3 days. I'm meeting with the Valentis to negotiate. By the end of the week, I'll have an arrangement that gets you out safely. He stood from the chair in one fluid motion, looking down at her with something that might have been respect. "This isn't your war, Bambino. You just got caught in the crossfire." He was halfway to the door before she found her voice again, the question escaping before she could stop it. "Why are you helping me?" Nico paused with his hand on the doorframe, his back to her. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he turned, and the firelight caught those ice-blue eyes, making them burn. "Because you're my responsibility," he said, his voice low and rough. "From the moment you got into my car." She swallowed hard. "That doesn't explain." "From the moment I saw those eyes." He took a step toward her, then stopped, jaw tightening like he was fighting something. "You're mine, Bambi, whether you accept it or not." Her heart slammed against her ribs. "I don't belong to anyone." Something flickered across his face, not anger, not amusement, something darker, hungrier. "Keep telling yourself that." And then he was gone, leaving Lily alone with the crackling fire and a heartbeat she couldn't control. She found herself outside his office 2 hours later, drawn by the sound of raised voices. The door was slightly ajar, and she could see Nico standing behind a massive desk, his jaw tight with frustration as he spoke rapidly into his phone in Italian. He hung up and threw the phone onto the desk, then picked up a document and stared at it like it had personally offended him. "Problem?" Lily said from the doorway, and Nico's head snapped up. "Eavesdropping? Hard not to when you're yelling in Italian." She stepped into the office, despite every instinct screaming at her to maintain distance. "What's wrong? My lawyers are incompetent, my business partners are thieves, and this contract will bankrupt me if I sign it." He tossed the document onto the desk. "Other than that, everything is wonderful." "Let me see." She held out her hand, and for a moment she thought he would refuse. Instead, he handed it over. "The force majeure clause is written incorrectly," she said, pointing to a paragraph near the bottom of the page. "It contradicts the liability section in Article 17. Any halfway competent lawyer could use that to void the entire agreement and sue you for damages." Nico stared at her like she'd suddenly started speaking in tongues, the document forgotten in his hand. "How do you know that?" "I graduated first in my class from Columbia Law." The words came out tired rather than proud, carrying the weight of years of being dismissed and overlooked. "But nobody listens to me because I'm young and I'm a woman, and I work at a firm that handles parking tickets and small claims court." "Your firm's loss," Nico said, and the simple statement hit her harder than any compliment she'd ever received. "My firm doesn't care. They have me fetching coffee and filing paperwork while the male associates get the real cases." She hadn't meant to say that, hadn't meant to reveal that much, but something about the way he was looking at her made the words spill out anyway. "Then they're idiots." He held out the contract toward her. "Show me what else is wrong with this." Something shifted in Nico's expression as he watched her take the document, a new awareness that hadn't been there before. He wasn't looking at her like she was a problem to be solved anymore, or a civilian who'd wandered into his war by accident. He was looking at her like she was something else entirely, something he hadn't expected to find. For the next hour, she walked him through every flaw in the document, every loophole that could be exploited, and every clause that needed revision. "This indemnification clause is a disaster waiting to happen," she said, circling another paragraph. "And whoever drafted this didn't understand New York contract law at all." "I'm paying them $2,000 an hour," Nico said, his jaw tightening with irritation that wasn't directed at her. "Then you're being robbed." She flipped to the next page. "This termination clause alone could cost you millions if the other party decides to get creative." Nico listened without interrupting, asking questions only when he needed clarification, treating her expertise with a respect she'd never received from her own colleagues. By the time they finished, the sun had begun to set outside the window, painting the office in shades of gold and orange. "You're wasted at that firm," Nico said as she handed the marked-up contract back to him. "Tell me something I don't know. You could do better. You should do better." His eyes held hers, and something unspoken passed between them. "Anyone who can't see what you're worth doesn't deserve you." Lily didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing at all, just turned and walked out of the office with her heart beating faster than it should have been. Enzo found her in this garden as the last light faded, sitting on a stone bench with her arms wrapped around herself. "Still thinking about running?" He dropped onto the bench beside her, and Lily let out a breath that fogged in the December air. I don't know anymore. That's progress. Yesterday you had a knife. His grin was bright and easy, and Lily felt her lips twitch. You're never going to let me forget that, are you? Absolutely not. Most exciting thing that's happened to me in months. He stretched his legs out. Besides, it was kind of badass. Stupid, but badass. I wasn't actually going to stab you. I know, your hands were shaking too much. He said it gently, without mockery. Why do you stay here? She asked after a moment. This life is dangerous. You could leave. Enzo's smile faded. My parents died when I was 9. Car accident, nothing glamorous. Nico took me in, raised me. He was 24 years old and suddenly responsible for a traumatized kid who wouldn't stop crying. Lily's heart clenched at the image. This is my family, Enzo continued quietly. The only one I've got. I'd die for these people. That's not something you walk away from. He turned to look at her, those brown eyes seeing more than she was comfortable with. You're alone too, aren't you? I can see it. The way you fight like you've got nothing to lose. He nudged her shoulder gently. Takes one to know one, Bambi. Lily didn't answer. They sat together in the gathering darkness, two orphans who understood loneliness in ways most people never would, and something that felt almost like friendship began to take root between them. Lily woke to unfamiliar silk sheets and the distant sound of someone humming in Italian downstairs. Rosa, probably, already cooking breakfast for a family that wasn't hers. 5 days since she'd seen her apartment, her clothes, her life. 5 days trapped in a mansion that belonged to one of the most dangerous families in New York. She stared at the ornate ceiling above her bed, and the thought hit her like cold water. She was a hostage, a prisoner, and she should be terrified every second of every day. But that was the problem, wasn't it? She wasn't terrified. Not anymore. Somewhere between Rosa's cooking and Enzo's stupid jokes and Nico's intense stares, the fear had started to fade, replaced by something far more dangerous. They were warm, she realized, hating how true it felt. This psychotic mafia family was actually warm. Rosa treated her like a daughter. Enzo treated her like a sister. And Nico. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying not to think about broad shoulders and ice blue eyes, and a voice like gravel wrapped in velvet. She wasn't starting to like them. She definitely wasn't starting to like him. That would be insane. Stockholm Syndrome, trauma bonding, something clinical and diagnosable that she could blame on circumstances rather than feelings. But when she thought about going back to her empty Brooklyn apartment, eating microwave dinners alone, nobody noticing if she disappeared for days, the thought didn't feel like freedom anymore. It felt like loneliness. She told herself to stop, to get up, to go downstairs, and stop hiding in her room like a scared child. She needed to show them she wasn't just some helpless victim they needed to protect. She threw off the covers and padded toward the bathroom, already planning what she'd say at breakfast, something confident, something that showed she wasn't afraid. She stripped off her pajamas, wrapped herself in a towel, and pushed open the bathroom door. Steam billowed out. The shower was running, and standing under the spray completely naked, water cascading down muscles and tattoos, and Nico turned around, slowly, like he had all the time in the world. Lily's brain short-circuited. Her eyes went exactly where they shouldn't have gone, down his chest, past the ridges of his abdomen, lower and lower, until her survival instincts finally kicked in and she slapped her hands over her face. "What the hell?" The words came out as a shriek, her voice cracking in a way that would have been embarrassing if she wasn't already dying of mortification. "Good morning to you too, Bambino." His voice was calm, almost amused, and she could hear him turning off the water like this was perfectly normal, like women walked in on him naked every day, and maybe they did. What did she know about his life? "Why are you in my bathroom?" She pressed her palms harder against her eyes, as if that could erase what she'd already seen, which it couldn't, because the image was now burned permanently into her brain. "My shower is broken. My room is next door. This was the closest bathroom." He said it like he was explaining something simple to a child, his voice infuriatingly calm, and she wanted to scream. "You can't just walk into a young woman's room like this!" She kept her hands pressed to her eyes, heart hammering against her ribs hard enough to bruise. "There are rules, boundaries, basic human decency." "This is my house." His voice was closer now, and she heard the rustle of a towel being pulled from the rack, the soft pad of wet feet on tile. "I go wherever I want." "That's not how it works." Her voice pitched higher with each word, borderline hysterical. "It's exactly how it works. My house, my rules." A pause, and she could practically hear the smirk spreading across his face. "You can uncover your eyes now. I have a towel." "I don't trust you." She kept her hands firmly in place, fingers pressed so tight against her eyelids she was seeing stars. "Smart girl." There was approval in his voice, warm and rough. "But I do have a towel." Another pause, weighted and knowing. "Although your fingers are spread apart, so you already know that." Lily pressed her fingers tighter together, cheeks burning hot enough to fry an egg, and heard him step closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off his body, smell soap and something masculine that made her head spin. "It's not a big deal," he said, and there was definitely amusement there now, curling through his voice like smoke. "Oh, it is a big deal." The words escaped before she could stop them, and mortification crashed through her like a tidal wave as she realized what she'd just admitted, while her eyes had been fixed directly on his. "I meant, that's not, I was talking about the situation." "Bambi." He said it like a warning, like a threat, like a promise all wrapped into one, and she heard him moving closer, felt the heat of him even through her closed eyes, her whole body vibrating with awareness. His finger hooked under her chin, tilting her face up, and she opened her eyes despite herself. He was inches away now, towel wrapped dangerously low around his hips, water dripping from his dark hair onto those impossibly broad shoulders, and his ice-blue eyes were burning into hers with an intensity that made her forget how to breathe. He said everything like he was about to hurt someone, she realized, her heart hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. Even something like this. And somehow that made her knees weak instead of making her run. "I saw where your eyes went. Twice," he said, his voice dropping to something rough and dark that made warmth spread through her like honey, his gaze never wavering from hers. "And I heard what you said." "I didn't mean—" she started, her voice barely a whisper, but he cut her off. "Don't lie to me." His grip on her chin tightened just slightly, not painful but impossible to ignore, and his ice-blue eyes pinned her in place like a butterfly on a board. "I don't like liars." He was so intense, so terrifying in the way he said beautiful things, like he was threatening to kill someone. And God help her, she was starting to think she liked it. "Don't look at me like that again," he said, releasing her chin and stepping back, his voice low and dangerous and full of dark promise. "Unless you want me to do something about it." He walked out without another word, leaving her standing in the steam with her heart racing and a heat coiling low in her belly that had absolutely nothing to do with embarrassment. Breakfast was torture. Lily sat at the kitchen table trying to eat while Nico sat across from her reading something on his phone. Every time she lifted her fork, she felt his gaze flick up to her face. Every time she looked down, she could feel him watching. Her cheeks burned. She couldn't swallow a single bite. Rosa chatted happily about dinner plans. Enzo made jokes Lily didn't hear. All she could focus on was the man across the table, the way his jaw tightened when he read something he didn't like, the way his fingers wrapped around his coffee cup, the way the morning light caught the sharp angles of his face. Then his phone rang and he stood, turning away to answer it. She couldn't stop staring at his profile. The strong nose, the full lips, the way his shoulders filled out that black shirt. Heat flooded through her entire body. Not embarrassment this time. Something deeper, something dangerous. Oh God, she thought, her fork frozen halfway to her mouth. This man is beautiful, and he's making me feel things I shouldn't feel. Nico ended the call and turned back, catching her staring. One eyebrow lifted slightly. Lily dropped her gaze to her plate, face burning, heart pounding. Across the table, Enzo grinned like he'd just witnessed a miracle. The boxes were waiting on her bed that afternoon, 3 matte black boxes with silver ribbons that probably cost more than her rent. No card, no note, just sitting there like a challenge she hadn't asked for. The first held cashmere sweaters in soft creams and deep burgundies, fabric so delicate it felt like touching clouds. The second held silk blouses and tailored pants, the kind of clothes she'd only ever seen in magazines or through windows of stores she could never afford. The third made her stop breathing. Black lace, delicate, expensive, absolutely scandalous black lace that barely qualified as underwear. It was laid out against tissue paper like it belonged in a museum, intricate patterns designed to hide nothing while suggesting everything. She picked up one piece, holding it to the light, and heat flooded her face as she imagined wearing it. Imagined someone seeing her in it. Imagined his ice-blue eyes darkening as he took in the lace against her skin, his hands reaching to trace the patterns, his voice dropping to that rough whisper. She shoved the thought away before it could fully form, but the warmth lingering low in her belly told her exactly where her mind had gone, and exactly whose gaze she'd been picturing tracing over black lace and bare skin. Dinner that night was quiet. Rosa had disappeared into the kitchen to prepare dessert, and Enzo had excused himself to take a phone call, leaving Lily alone with Nico at the massive table, candlelight flickering across his sharp features. She had almost relaxed when his voice cut through the silence. "Did you get your gifts?" She looked up, meeting those ice-blue eyes, and something in his gaze told her exactly which gift he meant. Her lips pursed with disdain. "You mean the black lace? That's your idea of a gift for a lady? Is that how you try to impress women?" she continued, her chin lifting, "with lingerie they didn't ask for?" Nico's lips curved, just slightly, barely there, and he raised his eyes to hers with a look that made her stomach flip. "Do you want to be impressed?" Heat flooded her cheeks. "I don't wear things like that, just so you know." "Maybe," he said, his voice dropping low. "I'll get you used to wearing them, for me." The words hit her like electricity. She stood so fast, her chair scraped against the floor, her whole body trembling with something she refused to name. "What are you implying?" Her voice came out sharp, defensive. "I'm not interested in you. You're a criminal. You kidnapped me." She turned and walked out to the terrace before he could respond, the cold December air hitting her like a wall. But even as she stood there, snow falling softly around her, she couldn't stop the image burning through her mind. Nico's hands on her skin, sliding over black lace, touching her everywhere while she wore nothing else. "Stop it," she told herself fiercely, gripping the stone railing. "Lily, get yourself together. I forbid you to think about this. It can never happen. Never." But her cheeks were burning despite the freezing air, and her heart was racing, and she had to pull open the collar of her sweater just to breathe. "Oh God," she thought, gasping in the cold. "I can't breathe." She couldn't sleep. The clock read 1:47 a.m. Lily had been staring at the ceiling for hours, replaying every moment, the lace, the dinner, the way he'd looked at her like he was already imagining peeling those clothes off her body. She needed water. She needed to stop thinking about Nico Santoro. The kitchen was dark except for Christmas lights casting everything in soft red and gold. She almost turned back when she saw the shadow by the counter, but then he moved into the light, and her mouth went dry. Nico was wearing nothing but grey sweatpants hanging low on his hips, chest bare and covered in tattoos, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "Can't sleep?" His voice was rougher than usual. "No." She moved toward the refrigerator, hyper-aware of her thin t-shirt, his bare chest, the darkness pressing around them. "You?" "I don't sleep much. Bad dreams." She took a drink of water, and when she lowered the bottle, he was closer. Close enough that she could smell whiskey, and something woodsy that made her head spin. "You have water on your lip," he said, and his thumb brushed across her lower lip. Slow, deliberate, burning. "Bambi." His voice was barely a whisper. "I want to kiss you." Her heart slammed against her ribs, but she forced steel into her voice. "You can want whatever you want. Doesn't mean you can have it." Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement. Challenge. His hand slid to her waist and pulled her against him in one swift motion, her body pressed to his bare chest. "Why can't I?" The words were low, dangerous. Her cheeks burned. "Because I don't want you to kiss me." He stared down at her, eyes dark with desire, and leaned close to her ear. "Liar," he whispered, and she felt the word shiver down her spine. She swallowed hard. "I've never even kissed anyone. You think my first kiss is going to be with you?" He pulled back, genuine surprise crossing his features. His thumb came up to trace her lips, feather light. "No one has touched these lips yet?" Her breath came fast, shallow. She couldn't speak. He leaned in, his mouth brushing her ear. "I'm going to kiss you so thoroughly that you'll dream about it for the rest of your life." He pulled back just enough to look at her, then lowered his lips toward hers. Close, so close, their breath mingling, his mouth a whisper away from hers. She couldn't move, couldn't think. Every cell in her body screamed for him to close the distance. Her mind fought her body, logic battling desire, but desire was winning. Then he stopped. "But first," he murmured against her lips, "you have to give me permission. You have to ask me for it." Before she could respond, his hands gripped her waist and lifted her onto the kitchen counter in one effortless motion. He stepped between her thighs, hands braced on either side of her, his mouth hovering over hers, torture disguised as restraint. "Ask me, Bambi." The command was soft but absolute, his eyes burning into hers. She was trembling, burning, every nerve ending on fire. "Please," she breathed, her voice breaking, her hands fisting in the fabric of nothing because he wasn't wearing a shirt. "Kiss me." He smiled, slow, devastating, and pulled back, leaving her gasping on the counter. "Wait." Confusion and disappointment flooded her voice, her body leaning toward him involuntarily. "Why?" "Your first kiss shouldn't be in a kitchen at 2 a.m., he said, his voice dropping soft, his thumb stroking her cheek. "It should be somewhere special. Somewhere you'll remember forever." "Why do you care?" The question came out raw, stripped bare. "Because when I kiss you, you'll remember it for the rest of your life," he said, his eyes burning into hers with an intensity that stole her breath. "I don't do anything halfway, Bambino, and I don't share. When you're mine completely." He stepped back, and she felt the loss like a wound, her body swaying toward him, her hands gripping the counter edge to keep from reaching for him. "Good night, Bambi," he said softly, something tender flickering beneath the ice in his eyes. "Good night," she whispered to his retreating back, heart pounding, skin burning, aching for something she'd never known she needed. She sat on that counter for a long time after he left, Christmas lights painting her skin red and gold, wondering how a man who said everything like a threat could make her feel so terrifyingly safe. Lily couldn't stop thinking about the kitchen. She lay in bed as morning light crept through the curtains, replaying every moment. His thumb on her lip, his voice saying he wanted to kiss her, his promise to wait, to make it special. No one had ever wanted to give her something special before. In 24 years of existence, she'd been the girl people forgot, the orphan no one adopted, the student no one mentored, the woman no one noticed. But Nico Santoro looked at her like she was the only thing in the room worth seeing. 6 days ago, she'd been a nobody with student debt and a studio apartment. Now she was lying in silk sheets in a mafia mansion, thinking about a man who killed people for a living and kissed like he meant it. Her life had become insane. And the most insane part? She didn't want to leave. She was still floating somewhere between disbelief and anticipation when she came downstairs for breakfast. And then the front door opened. The woman who walked in was tall, slim, with black hair cascading down her back like ink. Green eyes swept the room with predatory precision, cataloguing threats and dismissing weaknesses in a single glance. A red dress clung to her curves like a second skin, the kind of dress designed to make other women feel invisible. She was beautiful the way a poisonous snake was beautiful, mesmerizing and deadly, fangs hidden behind perfect red lips. "Niccolo," Her voice was honey and venom mixed together. "We need to talk. Now." Nico stood from the table, and Lily watched the transformation, warmth draining from his face, walls slamming up, his expression shuttering into cold stone. The man who'd touched her so gently last night disappeared, replaced by someone harder and more dangerous. "Bianca, I wasn't expecting you." So this was Bianca Valenti, the woman Nico was supposed to marry, the daughter of the man who murdered his father. She moved through the room like she owned it, heels clicking against marble with each deliberate step. Clearly. Bianca's eyes swept to Lily, and something flickered there, curiosity, contempt, or both. "And apparently you've been busy. There's a rumor going around, Niccolo. Nico Santoro has a woman. His men talk. Word travels fast." She circled Lily slowly, assessing her the way a buyer might assess livestock at auction. "This is her? This plain, forgettable little thing?" A cold laugh escaped those red lips. "She looks like she should be filing paperwork in some sad government office, not playing house with a mafia boss." The words landed like slaps, and Lily felt herself shrinking under that venomous gaze. All her newfound confidence evaporated, leaving the old insecurities exposed and raw. "Bianca." Nico's voice carried a warning sharp enough to cut glass. 2 months, Niccolo." Her composure cracked, revealing something almost like desperation beneath the ice. "My father has waited 2 months for you to set a wedding date. His patience is gone." The room went completely still. Even the air seemed to stop moving. She told him the rest in clipped, urgent tones. The attack on Christmas Eve was just a warning shot. The next one wouldn't miss. He had 1 week, 7 days, to take action on this wedding. Otherwise her father would destroy everyone he loved, Rosa, Enzo, his men, and his little pet lawyer too. Is she worth it? Bianca's eyes landed on Lily with something that might have been pity. This ordinary girl with nothing to offer? Is she worth your mother's life? Enzo appeared in the doorway, his usual grin replaced by cold steel. That's enough, Bianca. Stay out of this, puppy. But there was no real heat in her voice. Beneath all that polish and venom, she looked tired, scared even. Enough. Nico's voice was final as a closing door. I heard you. Now leave. Bianca walked toward the exit, then paused with her hand on the doorframe. 1 week, Niccolo. That's all I could buy you. For what it's worth, I don't want to marry you either. But I'd rather be your wife than watch my father burn this city down. The door closed behind her. Silence filled the room like floodwater. Bianca found her in the hallway 10 minutes later. She fell into step beside Lily, caught her arm, not bruising, just firm enough to stop her. I wasn't finished. She leaned against the wall, some of that perfect composure slipping away. She didn't want Nico, she admitted, never had. But her father wanted this alliance, and what her father wanted, he took. The alternative was a bloodbath. Lorenzo killing everyone Nico loved, Nico retaliating, a cycle of violence that would never end. You're not his type, you know. Bianca's gaze swept over Lily, clinical and dismissive. He goes for women like me, polished, powerful, cold. You're soft, warm. You don't belong in this world. Maybe that's exactly why, or maybe you're just a distraction. Bianca pushed off the wall, smoothing her dress. A warm body while he figures out how to destroy my family without marrying into it. She started to walk away, heels clicking against marble. 1 week, little lawyer. After that, either there's a wedding or there's a war, and soft girls don't survive wars. She disappeared around the corner, leaving Lily alone with her thoughts and a cold knot of fear growing in her stomach. The library was dark, except for the fire crackling in the hearth. Everyone else had gone to bed, and now it was just the two of them, sitting on the floor in front of the flames. Why don't you just marry Bianca? The question came out before she could stop it, and she felt him go still beside her. All your problems would be solved, no war, no bloodshed, and she's beautiful. She swallowed hard, forcing out the last part. If you marry her, the threat against me disappears too. Nico rose slowly, crossing the space between them with that predatory grace. He stopped in front of her, tilting her chin up with one finger, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "You want me to marry her?" His voice was soft, dangerous. "It's the logical choice, isn't it?" She looked up at him with wide eyes, trying to sound reasonable even as her heart raced. He smiled. The sight hit her like a physical blow. This man who rarely smiled, whose face was carved from ice and stone, when he smiled, he became the most devastating man she'd ever seen. "I don't like Bianca," he said simply, his thumb still stroking her cheek. "The woman I want is you." "You didn't even know me 6 days ago." Her voice came out breathless despite her best efforts. "You still don't know me." "Doesn't matter." His eyes burned into hers. "I've known you 6 days, and I want you." "You're like a child who wants a toy," she said, pulling back from his touch, anger flaring. "I doubt you even know what love means, and I'm not your plaything." "Yes, you are," he murmured, stepping closer, lowering his lips toward hers. "And you enjoy every second of it." His breath was hot against her mouth. "Besides, you're going to be my wife. I told you. You're mine. And in 3 days, you'll be underneath me wearing nothing but that black lace." Her palm connected with his face before she even realized she'd moved, the crack echoing through the silent room. Instant regret flooded through her. She hadn't meant to, but he was already pulling her against him, his mouth crashing onto hers with a hunger that stole her breath. Not gentle, not asking, taking. And God help her, she was kissing him back, her fingers fisting in his shirt, her body arching into his. When they broke apart, both gasping for air, her lips were swollen and her head was spinning. "I thought my first kiss was supposed to be unforgettable," she whispered, still pressed against his chest. "After that slap?" A rough laugh escaped him, his forehead resting against hers. "Trust me, it was." His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her swollen lip. "And when you look at me with those big eyes, when you're this close to me, how long do you think I can resist?" She pulled back, putting distance between them, her heart still racing. "If you think I'll be with you without love between us, you're wrong." Silence stretched between them, thick and electric. Something shifted in his expression, shock maybe, or respect, or something deeper she couldn't name. The predator in him retreated just slightly, making room for something almost human. "Love," he repeated, tasting the word. "Is that what you want, Bambi?" "I don't accept less than I deserve." She lifted her chin. "And neither should you." He stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, that dangerous smile softened into something that made her chest ache. "You really are different." The fire crackled. Outside, snow fell soft and silent. He stepped back and turned toward the door, but paused at the threshold. "Bambi? What?" "I'll learn to love with you." Then he was gone, leaving her with racing heart, burning lips, and the terrifying realization that she wanted him to learn. The dream was still burning through her when her eyes flew open. Nico's hands sliding up her thighs, rough and possessive, spreading her legs apart. Nico's mouth hot against her neck, teeth grazing her pulse point while his fingers hooked into the waistband of her panties. Nico's voice in her ear, low and commanding, telling her she was his, only his, always his, while his hand slipped between her thighs and found her wet, aching, desperate. The weight of him pressing her into silk sheets, his body covering hers like a brand, and she was gasping his name, arching into his touch, begging for something she'd never had but suddenly needed more than air. She jolted awake with her heart slamming against her ribs and heat flooding her cheeks as she realized where her hand had drifted during the night. The expensive sheets were tangled around her legs, damp with sweat, and between her thighs she was aching, throbbing, slick with want for a man who had kidnapped her, threatened her, and kissed her like he wanted to consume her whole. She pressed her burning face into the pillow and groaned. 7 days ago she'd been a virgin who'd never been properly kissed. Now she was having dreams that would make a romance novelist blush, waking up flushed and desperate in a mafia boss's guest room. The note on her nightstand caught her eye, folded paper tucked beneath a steaming cup of coffee that hadn't been there when she'd fallen asleep. Sharp, masculine handwriting. You were right. I'm learning. Nico. He'd been in her room, while she slept, while she dreamed about him doing unspeakable things to her body. Had she moaned his name, made sounds, touched herself while he stood there watching? She wanted to crawl under the covers and die. The office was chaos when she arrived. Papers everywhere, file boxes stacked against walls, tension thick enough to choke on. Nico sat behind his desk, those ice-blue eyes tracking her across the room. "The Valenti files," he said, gesturing to the mountain of documents. "Everything we have. Find something." She rolled up her sleeves and got to work. Hours blurred together, contract after contract, shell company after shell company. Her eyes burned, her neck ached, but she kept searching. And then she found it. "Nico." Her voice came out sharp, electric. "Come here, now." He was behind her in seconds, close enough that she could feel his heat. "What did you find?" "Arthur Bennington, Notary Public." She pointed to the signature. "He notarized every shell company registration, every document proving Valenti's legitimate business ownership." His brow furrowed. "And?" "Arthur Bennington died in November 2019. She watched his eyes widen. "But his signature keeps appearing on documents for 4 years after his death. A dead man notarizing legal documents." Silence. Complete. Absolute. "What does that mean?" His voice was low, dangerous. She turned to face him, fire blazing in her eyes. "It means every shell company, every offshore account, every business front the Valentis own, none of it is legally valid. One phone call to the DA, and they freeze every Valenti asset within days. No trial, no lawyers." She leaned forward. "Everything Lorenzo built. Gone." Enzo shot out of his chair. "Holy shit, Bambi." Marco made a sound almost like a laugh, respect flickering in those cold eyes for the first time. Rosa appeared in the doorway, and Enzo grabbed her shoulders. "Nonna, Bambi just destroyed the Valentis with paperwork." But Lily wasn't looking at them. She was looking at Nico. He stood frozen, pride and hunger burning in his expression. His hand came down on her shoulder, warm and heavy, electricity shooting through her. "Your lawyers looked for years," she said, holding his gaze. "I found it in 4 hours." His grip tightened. "Because you're not like them." "No." She lifted her chin. "I memorized every loophole, every precedent. No one listened because I was young and female and poor." Her voice hardened. "But I was always this good. I'm listening now." "Good." She smiled, sharp and triumphant. "Because I'm about to hand you Lorenzo Valenti's head on a legal platter." She found Enzo in this garden that afternoon, smoking and staring at the snow with an expression she'd never seen on his usually cheerful face. He patted the bench beside him. "Bambi, my favorite mafia-destroying lawyer, come sit." She settled next to him, pulling her coat tighter. "You're going to freeze out here." "Worth it. Needed to process," he said, exhaling smoke into the grey sky. 14 years Nico's been planning revenge. You found the answer in one morning. I got lucky. Bullshit." He turned to face her, serious for once. "Day 1, knife. Day 2, wall. Day 3, door slammed in Rosa's face. Now you're bringing down a mafia empire with a dead notary." A smile spread across his face. "That's not luck. That's evolution." His expression shifted to something that made her chest tight. "You changed. But so did Nico. He smiled yesterday. Actually smiled." He stubbed out his cigarette. 24 years I've been alive, watching my uncle. Never once seen him smile. Until you." "Enzo." "You're making him human again," he said, squeezing her hand. "Just don't break him. I don't think he'd survive it." The rest of the day passed in fragments that made her heart ache. At lunch, Nico brought her food himself, fingers brushing her arm, lingering for just a moment before pulling away. His jaw tight with restraint, his eyes hungry, but he didn't push. In the afternoon, she caught him watching her from across the room. When their eyes met, he looked away first. Let her breathe. At dinner, he pulled out her chair, and Rosa beamed while Enzo cracked a joke about Uncle Nico finally learning manners. Instead of the usual glare, Nico just smiled, small and private, directed only at her. This is almost worse, she thought. The restraint, the patience, like a predator who's learned to wait for permission to strike. He found her on the balcony after everyone else had gone to bed. Snow was falling soft and silent, and she knew he was there before he spoke, felt him like a change in pressure, like gravity rearranging itself around him. "You'll freeze." His voice came from behind her, low and rough. "I like the cold. It helps me think." He moved closer until she could feel his heat at her back. His hand came up, hovering near her shoulder, hesitating. "Can I touch you?" The question hit her like a blow to the chest. This dangerous, possessive man, asking permission. She turned to face him. "What happened to, 'I take what I want'?" His jaw tightened. "You happened." The words came out rough, almost pained. "You said you want love. I don't know how to give that. I don't know how to be gentle. But I'm trying, Bambi. For you, I'm trying." Something cracked open inside her chest. "Yes." The word came out as a whisper. "You can touch me." His hand found her face, cupping her cheek with a gentleness that made tears prick her eyes. "I'm going to kiss you now." She didn't refuse. His lips met hers. No teeth, no dominance, just warmth and want. She fisted her hands in his shirt and pulled him closer, and the kiss deepened, a sound escaping his throat that was half groan and half growl. When they broke apart, foreheads pressed together, both breathing hard, he asked if that was better, his voice wrecked. She laughed, breathless. "Good different. But I kind of miss the other version too." His eyes went dark. "Don't tempt me." "Maybe I want to tempt you." His grip tightened on her waist, fingers digging in just enough to make her gasp. "You're playing with fire." "You said I have fire in me." She smiled up at him. "Maybe I want to see what happens when we burn together." He made a sound like a snarl and kissed her again, harder, deeper, possession bleeding through. His hand slid into her hair, tilting her head back, and she melted into him. Then he pulled back, breathing hard. "We need to move tonight. The evidence won't wait. If Lorenzo finds out what we have, he'll destroy everything." The drive to the DA's office was silent. Lily sat with the folder of documents in her lap, enough to bring down an empire, enough to put Lorenzo Valenti in prison for the rest of his life. She stared out the window at the city lights blurring past, her mind racing through everything that had happened in the past week, enough to put Nico there too, if she wanted. The black SUV pulled up in front of the building, its engine humming in the cold night air. Street lights cast harsh shadows across his face as he turned to look at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "I trust you." His voice was low and rough, stripped of its usual command. "I know you could turn me in too. Everything you have on the Valentis, you have on me. The kidnapping, the threats, the week you spent as my prisoner." His jaw tightened. "One word to the DA and I'm in handcuffs by morning." She didn't look at him, kept her eyes fixed on the folder, on the documents that held so much power. When she spoke, her voice was flat and hard. "You kidnapped me." Each word landed like a stone. "I haven't been home in a week. You held me against my will. I couldn't call anyone. Couldn't leave." Her jaw tightened with old anger. "I could tell them you're working with the Valentis, that both families are in this together, that you're just as guilty as Lorenzo." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. She could feel him watching her, feel the weight of his gaze on the side of her face. "Look at me, Bambi." She didn't move. "Lily." Not Bambi, her real name, spoken soft and raw. Something in the way he said it made her turn despite herself. Those ice-blue eyes were open in a way she'd never seen. Vulnerable, exposed. No walls, no masks, no predator lurking beneath the surface. Just a man who was putting everything he had in her hands. "I'm yours." His voice was barely above a whisper, rough with something that might have been fear. "That's how much I trust you." She held his gaze for a long moment, something cracking in her chest that she couldn't name. Then she opened the car door and stepped out into the cold without a word. The hour inside felt like a lifetime. She handed over the documents, answered questions, watched the DA's expression shift from skepticism to disbelief to barely contained excitement as he realized what she was giving him, a case that would make his career, an empire built on forgery, a man who'd thought himself untouchable, about to learn how wrong he was. She told them everything about the Valentis. She told them nothing about Nico. When she walked back into the winter night, snowflakes catching in her hair, the black SUV was still there, still waiting. He could have left, should have left probably, given what she might have done inside, but he'd stayed. She opened the door and slid into the passenger seat. The heater hummed. Snow fell silent outside the windows. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "You could have run." His voice was rough, raw, like the words cost him something. "You could have disappeared into the city, called the police, never looked back." His hands tightened on the steering wheel. "You were free the moment you walked through those doors." She met his eyes, those ice-blue eyes that had terrified her a week ago, that had haunted her dreams, that looked at her now with something raw and wondering and impossibly soft. "I want to spend New Year's Eve with you." Her voice was quiet but certain, and she watched something shift in his expression. Shock, hope, the beginning of something that looked terrifyingly like love. "With you, with Enzo and Rosa, with a warm family." She reached over and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his, feeling the calluses and the strength and the warmth of him. "Take me home." The mansion had transformed overnight, fairy lights everywhere, candles on every surface, the smell of Rosa's cooking wrapping around Lily like the warmest hug she'd ever known. She stopped at the bottom of the stairs, hand pressed to her chest, and just breathed it in. 7 days ago, this place had been her prison. Now it sparkled with warmth and something that felt terrifyingly like home. Rosa found her standing there with tears in her eyes and immediately cupped her face. "Bella, you look like an angel," she cried, pulling Lily into the kitchen where Enzo was stealing mozzarella. "Bambi, you clean up nice for someone who tried to stab me last week," he grinned, popping cheese into his mouth, and Rosa swung her wooden spoon at his head while he ducked with a laugh that filled the whole room. "Every family has these things," Rosa shrugged, waving her spoon dismissively. "Knives, arguments, someone gets stabbed. Normal." This is a mafia family, Lily thought, warmth blooming in her chest, and somehow I'm part of it now. The gifts came after dinner. They gathered in the living room, fire crackling, champagne glasses glinting. Lily hadn't expected anything. A week ago she'd been a prisoner here. Rosa pressed a package into her hands with trembling fingers. Inside, a hand-knitted cashmere sweater and a worn leather cookbook filled with faded Italian handwriting. "Family recipes," Rosa whispered, tears spilling down her weathered cheeks as she turned the pages. "My mother's, her mother's, now yours, Tesoro." Lily's throat closed completely. No one had ever given her something like this, something that whispered, "You belong here, now." Enzo dropped a poorly wrapped package in her lap. Open it," he urged, bouncing like a child, and inside she found a black T-shirt reading, "I survived the Santoro family," with a cartoon knife and a wide-eyed deer. She burst out laughing so hard her stomach hurt. Marco stepped forward with a leather notebook, her initials embossed in gold. He didn't speak, just nodded once when she looked up with questions in her eyes. Respect. After everything, he was giving her respect. She looked around at all of them, and guilt twisted sharp in her stomach. "I didn't get any of you anything," she said in a small voice, heat flooding her cheeks. "I'm so sorry, She stopped, blinked, started laughing. "Actually, I was kidnapped and brought here a week ago," she managed through giggles, tears of laughter forming in her eyes. "It would have been weird if I'd stopped at a gift shop." The room exploded. Rosa's laughter high and delighted, Enzo howling, even Marco's shoulders shaking. And Nico was smiling, really smiling, something soft that made her heart stutter. "One more gift," Rosa announced, her eyes sparkling with knowing as she looked at her son, and the room went suddenly, breathlessly quiet. Nico stood. He walked toward her slowly, something different in his posture, almost nervous, and Lily's pulse started racing before she understood why. He stopped in front of her, held her gaze, and sank to one knee. Her breath caught. Her hand flew to her mouth. He pulled out a velvet box and opened it, a diamond catching firelight like a fallen star. "I saw those big eyes in my rearview mirror," he began, his voice rough and stripped of command, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips, "and I knew I was in trouble. This girl who got in the wrong car, talked too much, kicked me, pulled a knife on my cousin, tried to climb my wall." Lily laughed through the tears already streaming down her face, her whole body trembling. "I never trusted anyone, Bambi. Never let anyone in," he continued, his expression shifting to something raw and painful, jaw tightening with old wounds. "Caring about people gets them killed, but you changed everything." He held up the ring, and his hand was trembling, this man who faced bullets without flinching, trembling because of her. "Changed me. I'm not a gentleman. I'm not romantic. I don't know beautiful words," he said, his voice cracking, and Lily felt her heart shatter and rebuild in the same breath. "But I promise you, every day I will protect you. Every day I will show you that you matter. Every day I will learn to love you better." He looked up at her with those ice-blue eyes, completely open, completely vulnerable. "Lily Whitmore, will you marry me?" The last words came out barely above a whisper, and she watched his hand tremble as he held up the ring. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at this man who had kidnapped her, threatened her, kissed her like she was oxygen, and somehow become her home. "A week ago, I got into the wrong car thinking it was my Uber," she whispered, her voice breaking as tears fell freely. 10 seconds before that, I was standing on a frozen sidewalk feeling sorry for myself because I was so alone." She reached down to cradle his cheeks, thumbs brushing his cheekbones. "When I got into your car, I thought my life was over." A sob escaped her throat, but she was smiling through her tears. "But life is strange, Nico. So strange. I never imagined that the wrong car would give me a family, would give me love, would give me you." Her whole body trembled as she looked into those ice-blue eyes. "Yes. God, yes. I'll marry you." He slid the ring on, perfect fit, and then he was on his feet, lifting her, spinning her, his mouth finding hers while Rosa sobbed and Enzo whooped and Marco actually clapped. "Bambi Santoro," he murmured against her lips when they finally broke apart, his voice reverent and possessive all at once. "I like the sound of that." She went to her room at midnight, still floating on champagne and happiness. The door opened behind her. Nico filled the doorway, eyes dark with hunger, and he crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her against him without a word, kissing her like she was the only thing keeping him alive. "My future wife," he growled against her lips, and heat flooded her entire body as her knees nearly buckled. She kissed him back desperately, fingers fisting his shirt, body arching into his. A week of almost, of dreams that left her aching, all crashing over her now like a wave. He lifted her effortlessly and carried her to the bed, laying her on silk sheets with a gentleness that contradicted his burning eyes. His body covered hers, and she could feel every hard line of him. "Nico," she pulled back, breathless, heart pounding against her ribs. "We don't know each other that well." "We will," he promised against her neck, kissing her jaw, the spot behind her ear that made her gasp. "Every day. For the rest of our lives." "I'm never quitting my job," she managed, as his hands slid under her shirt, the words fracturing. "I'm a lawyer." "I'll build you an office," he murmured, fingers tracing her ribs. "Best in Manhattan, your name in gold." "My friends stay in my life," she gasped, as his thumb brushed her breast. "You can't forbid." He silenced her with a kiss so deep she forgot her own name, and when he pulled back, his eyes were burning. "No more talking, Bambi," he commanded, his voice gravel and smoke. "Focus on my hands, my mouth, what I'm about to do to you." "Nico," She trembled, vulnerability cracking her voice open. "I've never done this before." Something tender broke through the hunger, and he cradled her face with impossible gentleness. "Give yourself to me," he whispered, lips brushing hers like a prayer. "Let me show you what love feels like." He undressed her slowly, reverently, his mouth following his hands, shoulders, stomach, hips, until he reached her underwear and stopped. Black lace. A slow smile spread across his face, and he looked up at her with those burning eyes. "I told you 3 days ago this moment would come," he murmured, fingers tracing the edge of the lace against her hip. "You wore it for me." Her cheeks flushed crimson. "I didn't. It was the only clean—" "Liar," he whispered, pressing a kiss to her stomach, and she stopped trying to explain because his mouth was moving lower and she couldn't think anymore. He undressed her completely, reverently, his mouth following his hands, hips, thighs, until she was trembling with need. "Are you sure?" he asked. His voice strained with restraint, and she pulled him down and kissed him, whispering against his mouth that she'd never been more sure of anything. The first moment was sharp. He held still, kissing away her tears, whispering beautiful, perfect mine. When she nodded, he moved, and pleasure built in waves until she was gasping his name, nails raking his back. "Lily!" "You're mine," he groaned against her neck, and when they shattered together, something shifted inside her, like coming home after 24 years of being lost. She woke to sunlight and his body curved around hers, his arm across her waist, the ring on her finger, the delicious ache everywhere. This is real, she thought. This is my life now. They went downstairs hand in hand. Rosa took one look at them, Lily's flushed cheeks, Nico's soft expression, and burst into tears. "First breakfast of New Year, special!" The TV murmured until a name made Lily freeze. Lorenzo Valenti, arrested, federal agents, anonymous tip. "It worked," she breathed, turning to Nico with fierce triumph blazing in her eyes, her whole body electric with victory. "It actually worked." He pulled her close and kissed her forehead, telling her that she had done this. She had brought them down. Enzo stumbled in, hair a disaster. "After 14 years, he said, collapsing into a chair with disbelief written across his face. "It's over." Rosa crossed herself, crying. This wasn't just business. This was a wound finally healing. Breakfast was the happiest meal Lily had ever known. Enzo came back from the front door with a strange grin. 5 families outside. Rossis, Mancinis, Morettis, Lombardis, De Lucas, he announced, pausing for effect. They want Lily as their lawyer. Nico's expression went cold. He stood, pulling Lily against him. "Tell them my wife is not a mafia lawyer," he said, steel in every word. "She's my lawyer, only mine." Lily raised her eyebrows at him. He sighed. "And her other clients, non-mafia. Regular people," he added, jaw tight. "She's not getting involved in this world." "You won't allow it?" she asked, challenge flickering in her eyes. "I'm protecting you," he said, cupping her face, his expression softening. "I know you can protect yourself, but let me anyway, please." She saw the fear beneath, fear of losing her to darkness. "Okay," she whispered. "No mafia clients. Just you." He kissed her soft and sweet, and Rosa started crying again. Later, Lily stood at the window, watching snow fall. Nico wrapped his arms around her from behind. "What are you thinking, Bambi?" "That a week ago I got in the wrong car," she said quietly, turning to face him. "Terrified, alone. Now I have everything." He asked if she had any regrets, his voice soft, and she shook her head, smiling up at ice-blue eyes that no longer frightened her. "Not one." He kissed her forehead, her nose, the corner of her mouth. "Welcome home, Lily. Thank you for listening to the very end. It really means a lot. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Leave a comment with your city or country. It always makes me smile to see how far these stories travel.